get to Tim Walz, who, just when you think no one's sitting at this table, neither she nor the big white blanket, can embarrass themselves any further, he does. She asks him, to her credit, about the carrying the weapons in war, which we know is a lie. He never served in war. He's been stealing valor for quite some time.
Tim Walz has coasted for years on that carefully packaged Minnesota nice reputation, grinning, shaking hands, and selling himself as the easygoing governor next door. But when Megyn Kelly put him under her microscope, that polished image split apart instantly. The grin faded, the shine wore off, and the cracks revealed a career built on contradictions, mistakes, and calculated opportunism hiding just beneath the surface.
So out on the new media tour and trying to help her when he's not defending his comments on the Electoral College. And he sits down with Michael Strahan, who's the best thing ABC has going. And Strahan actually asks him about his many, many lies. There's a much longer list than actually came up, but he did raise it to his credit. Here's how that went.
Walz has long played the role of the everyman governor, the cornbread dad type who just happens to run a state. He leans on the Midwest nice gimmick like it's a brand. The guy you'd picture walking into a church supper with a casserole in one hand and a football yarn in the other. But once Kelly started firing, that wholesome act collapsed quicker than a discount lawn chair in a thunderstorm.
Carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in school.
And when the topic shifts to children being gunned down in schools, Kelly doesn't blink. She doesn't shrug off the double talk. She tears it to shreds, shining a spotlight on the gaps between Walz's words and his actions. He loves to present himself as the calm, steady Midwestern hand. But what Kelly exposes is a politician who tosses out promises to one crowd and whispers the opposite to another. Wallpaper politics, bland, forgettable, and fake.
That just aren't true. And the comment about weapons of war that I carried in war, which you didn't. You said that you were in Hong Kong during the Tiananmen Square massacre when you weren't. You kind of chalked it all up to bad grammar or getting the dates wrong. But your opponents say you lied to make yourself look better. Do they have a point?
Well, look, 35 years ago, got the opportunity to be in Hong Kong, be in China, learned a lot about it, served 24 years in the National Guard, passionately, in an instance, talking about gun violence in school.
Take school safety and crime. Walz's strategy for governing seems to be ignoring problems until they blow up in his face. Crime spikes? He mutters some vague cliche about community values. Schools crumble? He drops by for a staged classroom photo op, flashing a plastic grin as if that alone fixes anything. Then he vanishes, leaving behind broken systems and no solutions. Real change under Walz is about as rare as a Minnesota summer that doesn't disappear in 2 weeks.
Continues for Tim Walz on the disastrous performance he delivered, in particular when it comes to his self-described knuckle-headed behavior, which was just his latest in a series of lies. The reason he resorted to, I'm a knucklehead, was he got confronted with his latest lie.
Kelly doesn't just hit the hollow words. She drills into the hypocrisy. Walz brags about defending small-town values, but his policies read like they're written by big city bureaucrats. 1 minute he's shouting about freedom and responsibility. The next he's cheering on government overreach if it benefits his allies. Kelly strips away the mask, calling him what he is, a chameleon politician who shifts his colors depending on who's watching.
People know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is. And again, my record has been out there for over 40 years to speak for itself.
And the the idea that you said that you were in war.
Yeah.
Did you misspeak, as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar's not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack.
So good spot. Let's go through it. You said you carried weapons in war, but you've never deployed in a war zone. A campaign official of yours said you misspoke. Did you? Well, I'm proud, incredibly proud of my record.
The real fireworks come when she digs into his crisis management or his inability to manage. COVID turned Walz's governorship into a stress test, and he failed. He handed out mandates like candy, then tripped over his own contradictions, leaving Minnesotans more confused than guided. Kelly makes the point sharp. Looking calm isn't the same as being competent. His leadership during the pandemic was chaos in disguise, rules changing daily, priorities flipping overnight, excuses pouring out like a student making up stories for missing homework. The state didn't get leadership. They got disorder wrapped in a soft accent.
There's a long list of them. This one was that he was in China when the Tiananmen Square disaster unfolded, when hundreds of people were killed. You know, whether you were in a place where hundreds of people are being massacred by their government when it happens. But he continues to try to say, like, oh, gee, I was just kind of confused. You know, that happened in May and I was there in August, but I guess I just imagined that I was there, whatever. So he got asked about that debate moment where he completely melted down.
Next up is Walz's record on policing and public safety, and the contradictions tower higher than a Minnesota snowdrift. On TV, he puffs his chest, talking tough about backing the badge. But the second the activist crowd raises its voice, he caves like a paper plate holding too much barbecue. Kelly hammers home the obvious. What he calls leadership during unrest was nothing more than a game of hide and seek. He let the chaos fester, hoping that silence could pass as compassion. But compassion doesn't stop rioters, and empathy doesn't restore law and order. His act of trying to keep everyone happy only managed to tick off everyone equally. Kelly roasts him by comparing his governing style to a Minnesota winter, long, dreary, and filled with empty promises that spring is right around the corner. Except spring never comes when people need it. And as for his down-home persona, Kelly slices that apart too. Sure, he tosses in stories about small-town roots or teaching high school, but that's not authenticity. That's costume politics.
Oh, they're comparing this moment by Tim Walz to that because he looked so inept and like a faker, like he didn't belong there and he was trying to convince us of something that wasn't real as he decided to go pheasant hunting. And Charlie, you're a gun guy. You tell me whether this looked authentic to you. Here he is.
That's my theory. And it never fits quite right. It never fits quite right. Not quite right. How do you give it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This is a Beretta A400.
Kelly wipes away the fantasy that Walz is still just one of us. The reality is he's been in politics so long, the only small town he remembers is the one his consultants wrote into his stump speeches. Then she digs into his economic record, and it's brutal. Walz loves to wrap his budgets in buzzwords about responsibility and stability. But under him, Minnesota has looked like a long experiment in how much nonsense taxpayers can tolerate. Sky-high taxes? Check. Bloated budgets? Double check. And somehow, even with all that spending, basic services keep falling behind. It's like buying every shiny kitchen gadget in the store, then burning dinner anyway. And now he's eyeing a bigger stage, as if running a floundering lemonade stand qualifies him to run Starbucks. Kelly doesn't just laugh, she calls it what it is: ambition without competence. That's not vision, it's delusion. Walz isn't delivering leadership. He's confusing applause for actual results.
Really proud of my service in the classroom. Did I mention I was a teacher and a coach, an assistant coach? Okay, whatever. But he's more stolen valor. In the classroom, I'm in the classroom. My record speaks for itself. It doesn't actually. You've put a lot of lies into that record that you've been called out on by service personnel. You must clarify, as your campaign had tried to do. And now you appear to be distancing yourself from that clarification. And then here's two pieces of this that are really, I speak like they do. People are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about, and then he goes on to blame it on the school shootings. I guess he was upset about school shootings, so he lied. But stop saying you speak.
Kelly digs deeper, tearing down the idea that Walz is some master unifier. His defenders brag that he brings people together, but she flips that claim upside down. The only unity Walz ever inspired was when Democrats, Republicans, and independents all rolled their eyes in sync. The left thinks he's too timid. The right thinks he's reckless. And everyone else sees a man who couldn't make a decisive move to save his career. That unifier title? It isn't a compliment. It's the punchline to a bad joke. Walz has managed to unite people only in shared disappointment. And in today's volatile climate, mediocrity isn't harmless, it's dangerous. Because when leaders hide behind charm instead of making hard calls, the damage doesn't fall on them. It falls on everyone else. Kelly smashes the Minnesota nice illusion to dust, showing Walz for what he is. Not a steady hand, but an empty glove.
President Harris said that she told you to be a little bit more careful on how you say things.
Well, I did it, even the other day of just speaking passionately about these gun violence situations and meeting with these survivors. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I do think in these positions, whether it be governor or being vice president of the United States, you do need to be careful. You do need to be a little more thoughtful on it.
Okay, guys, I will submit to you that the American people are not dumb. And I would submit to you that the American people will look over "I'm friends with school shooters," which he said in that vice presidential debate, as him misspeaking. Everyone will give him that grace. But it's not going to work on this litany of other lies, because you don't misspeak over and over.
Walz has mastered one political trick, failing upward while smiling through it. Kelly doesn't let the audience miss it. Behind that calm grin and soft voice lies a career built on dodging, not deciding. He thought his smile was his shield, but Kelly turned it into a target, and she hit every time. His whole strategy relies on the public's short memory. He banks on people forgetting, moving on, or just not caring enough to ask questions. As long as he flashes the same smile and recycles the same lines, he thinks voters will give him a pass. But for all his talk about accountability, his administration has turned ducking scrutiny into an art form. Real questions vanish into bureaucratic black holes, drowned in buzzwords, or delayed until outrage fizzles. Kelly calls it exactly what it is, a con game. It's the political equivalent of slapping new paint over water damage and praying nobody notices the rot underneath.
On Wednesday in Pennsylvania, and here's how he handled it.
I have my dates wrong. I was in Hong Kong and China in 1989. That move from Hong Kong into China, it was profound for me. That was the summer of democracy. I said it's where I understood how sacred democracy was. It's what encouraged me, about 15 back and forth with my students, taking them to China. I speak like everybody else speaks. I need to be clear, I will tell you that, but here's my whole point on that thing with China. I do understand China a hell of a lot better than Donald Trump. Kamala Harris understands.
Those cracks widen even more when education comes up. Walz crowns himself the champion of Minnesota's kids, but the test scores tell a grim story. Reading and math results have tanked, schools are crumbling, and his so-called fixes amount to dumping more cash into a system with zero accountability. Kelly calls out the hypocrisy. Walz promises opportunity for every child, but what parents see is frustration, teachers see burnout, and students see themselves sliding behind the rest of the country. He waves the equity banner nonstop, but equity without results is just expensive window dressing. And his supposed strength, the economy? Families aren't thriving. They're drowning under taxes while barely treading water. Kelly cuts straight through the spin. Walz doesn't deliver outcomes. He delivers optics dressed up to look like progress.
Instance there, proud of the service that I've done, proud to be a teacher in that classroom, proud to have been very public all these years, and owning it when I, said, look, I was there in August of '89. And I think the policies, whether it be dealing with China and understanding China's human rights record, what you can be certain there is that Kamala Harris and I aren't going to, pick dictators on speed dial.
Well, but it's one of the things with trust. So there are going to be some people who say, we can't trust him to even tell the truth about himself.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
Well, I said they know who I am. I know who I am. I know the work that I've done. I know that things get spun in a political...
The final blow comes when Kelly reveals Walz's real pattern. Not leading, but following. He waits to see which way the wind blows, then dashes to the front and pretends it was courage all along. During the George Floyd riots, that weakness was exposed in full. Minnesota was on fire and Walz flailed, caught between activists demanding revolution and citizens begging for order. In the end, he pleased no one. Too weak for one side, too heavy-handed for the other. Kelly doesn't sugarcoat it. She calls it indecision dressed up as balance. Schools stayed closed longer than needed. Businesses collapsed under endless restrictions. Mental health cratered. And through it all, Walz clung to inaction until pressure forced his hand. Kelly paints him not as a visionary, but as a governor ruled by fear, leaving everyday Minnesotans to sweep up the wreckage he caused.